Chapter 3. Lord Peter finished a Scarlatti sonata and sat looking thoughtfully at his own hands. The fingers were long and muscular, with wide, flat joints and square tips. When he was playing, his rather hard grey eyes softened, and his long, indeterminate mouth hardened in compensation. At no other time had he any pretensions to good looks, and at all times he was spoilt by a long, narrow chin and a long, receding forehead, accentuated by the brushed-back sleekness of his tow-coloured hair. Labour papers, softening down the chin, caricatured him as a typical aristocrat. "That's a wonderful instrument," said Parker. "It ain't so bad," said Lord Peter, "but Scarlatti wants a harpsichord. Piano's too modern, all thrills and overtones. No good for our job, Parker. Have you come to any conclusion?" "The man in the bath," said Parker, methodically, was not a well-off man, careful of his personal appearance. He was a labouring man, unemployed, but who had only recently lost his employment. He had been tramping about looking for a job when he met with his end. Somebody killed him and washed him and scented him and shaved him in order to disguise him and put him into Thipps's bath without leaving a trace. Conclusion: the murderer was a powerful man, since he killed him with a single blow on the neck, a man of cool head and masterly intellect, since he did all that ghastly business without leaving a mark, a man of wealth and refinement, since he had all the apparatus of an elegant toilet handy, and a man of bizarre and almost perverted imagination, as is shown in the two horrible touches of putting the body in the bath and of adorning it with a pair of pince-nez. "He is a poet of crime," said Whimsy. "By the way, your difficulty about the pince-nez is cleared up. Obviously, the pince-nez never belonged to the body. That only makes a fresh puzzle. One can't suppose the murderer left them in that obliging manner as a clue to his own identity." "We can hardly suppose that. I'm afraid this man possessed what most criminals lack, a sense of humour. Rather macabre humour, true. But a man who can afford to be humorous at all in such circumstances is a terrible fellow. I wonder what he did with the body between the murder and depositing it chez Thipps. Then there are more questions. How did he get it there? And why? Was it brought in at the door, as Sug of Our Heart suggests, or through the window, as we think, on the not very adequate testimony of a smudge on the windowsill? Had the murderer accomplices? Is little Thipps really in it, or the girl? It don't do to put the notion out of court merely because Sug inclines to it. Even idiots occasionally speak the truth accidentally. If not, why was Thipps selected for such an abominable practical joke? Has anybody got a grudge against Thipps? Who are the people in the other flats? We must find out that. Does Thipps play the piano at midnight over their heads, or damage the reputation of the staircase by bringing home dubiously respectable ladies? Are there unsuccessful architects thirsting for his blood? Damn it all, Parker, there must be a motive somewhere. Can't have a crime without a motive, you know." "A madman," suggested Parker, doubtfully. "With a deuced lot of method in his madness. He hasn't made a mistake, not one, unless leaving hairs in the corpse's mouth can be called a mistake. Well, anyhow, it's not Levy. You're right there. I say, old thing, neither your man nor mine has left much clue to go upon, has he? And there don't seem to be any motives knocking about either, and we seem to be 2 suits of clothes short in last night's work. So Reuben makes tracks without so much as a fig leaf, and a mysterious individual turns up with a pince-nez, which is quite useless for purposes of decency. Dash it all, if only I had some good excuse for taking up this body case officially." The telephone bell rang. The silent bunter, whom the other two had almost forgotten, padded across to it. "It's an elderly lady, my lord," he said. "I think she's deaf. I can't make her hear anything, but she's asking for your lordship." Lord Peter seized the receiver and yelled into it a "hello" that might have cracked the vulcanite. He listened for some minutes with an incredulous smile, which gradually broadened into a grin of delight. At length he screamed, all right," several times, and rang off. "By Jove," he announced, beaming. "Sportin' old bird. It's old Mrs. Thipps, deaf as a post, never used the phone before, but determined. perfect Napoleon. The incomparable Sugg has made a discovery and arrested little Thipps, old lady abandoned in the flat. Thipps's last shriek to her, tell Lord Peter Wimsey, old girl undaunted, wrestles with telephone book, wakes up the people at the exchange, won't take no for an answer, not been able to hear it, gets through, says, will I do what I can? Says she would feel safe in the hands of a real gentleman. Oh, Parker, Parker, I could kiss her, I really could, as Thipps says. I'll write to her instead. No, hang it, Parker, we'll go round. Bunter, get your infernal machine and the magnesium. I say, we'll all go into partnership, pool the 2 cases and work 'em out together. You shall see my body tonight, Parker, and I'll look for your wandering Jew tomorrow. I feel so happy I shall explode. Oh, Sugg, Sugg, how art thou suggified? Bunter, my shoes. I say, Parker, I suppose yours are rubber-soled. Not. Tut, tut, you mustn't go out like that. We'll lend you a pair. Gloves? Here, my stick, my torch, the lamp black, the forceps, knife, pillboxes, all complete? Certainly, my lord. Oh, Bunter, don't look so offended. I mean no harm. I believe in you. I trust you. What money have I got? That'll do. I knew a man once, Parker, who let a world-famous poisoner slip through his fingers because the machine on the underground took nothing but pennies. There was a queue at the booking office, and the man at the barrier stopped him, and while they were arguing about accepting a £5 note, which was all he had, for a 2-penny ride to Baker Street, the criminal had sprung into a circle train and was next heard of in Constantinople, disguised as an elderly Church of England clergyman touring with his niece. Are we all ready? Go. They stepped out, Bunter carefully switching off the lights behind them. As they emerged into the gloom and gleam of Piccadilly, Wimsey stopped short with a little exclamation. Wait a second, he said. I've thought of something. If Sugg's there, he'll make trouble. I must short-circuit him. He ran back, and the other 2 men employed the few minutes of his absence in capturing a taxi. Inspector Sugg and a subordinate Cerberus were on guard at 59 Queen Caroline Mansions, and showed no disposition to admit unofficial inquirers. Parker, indeed, they could not easily turn away, but Lord Peter found himself confronted with a surly manner and what Lord Beaconsfield described as a masterly inactivity. It was in vain that Lord Peter pleaded that he had been retained by Mrs. Thipps on behalf of her son. "Retained," said Inspector Sugg with a snort. "She'll be retained if she doesn't look out. Shouldn't wonder if she wasn't in it herself, only she's so deaf, she's no good for anything at all." "Look here, Inspector," said Lord Peter. "What's the use of being so bally obstructive? You'd much better let me in. You know I'll get there in the end. Dash it all, it's not as if I was taking the bread out of your children's mouths. Nobody paid me for finding Lord Attenbury's emeralds for you." "It's my duty to keep out the public," said Inspector Sugg morosely, "and it's going to stay out." "I never said anything about your keeping out of the public," said Lord Peter easily, sitting down on the staircase to thrash the matter out comfortably, though I've no doubt pussyfoot's a good thing, on principle, if not exaggerated. The golden mean, Sugg, as Aristotle says, keeps you from being a golden ass. Ever been a golden ass, Sugg? I have. It would take a whole rose garden to cure me, Sugg. You are my garden of beautiful roses, my own rose, my one rose, that's you. "I'm not going to stay any longer talking to you," said the harassed Sugg. "It's bad enough. Hello, drat that telephone. Here, Cawthorne, go and see what it is, if that old catamaran will let you into the room." "Shutting herself up there and screaming," said the inspector. "It's enough to make a man give up crime and take to hedging and ditching." The constable came back. "It's from the yard, sir," he said, coughing apologetically. "The chief says every facility is to be given to Lord Peter Wimsey, sir." He stood apart non-committally, glazing his eyes. "5 aces," said Lord Peter cheerfully. "The chief's a dear friend of my mother's. No go, Sugg. It's no good bucking. You've got a full house. I'm going to make it a bit fuller." He walked in with his followers. The body had been removed a few hours previously, and when the bathroom and the whole flat had been explored by the naked eye and the camera of the competent bunter, it became evident that the real problem of the household was old Mrs. Thipps. Her son and servant had both been removed, and it appeared that they had no friends in town beyond a few business acquaintances of Thipps's, whose very addresses the old lady did not know. The other flats in the building were occupied respectively by a family of 7, at present departed to winter abroad, an elderly Indian colonel of ferocious manners, who lived alone with an Indian manservant, and a highly respectable family on the 3rd floor, whom the disturbance over their heads had outraged to the last degree. The husband, indeed, when appealed to by Lord Peter, showed a little human weakness, but Mrs. Appledore, appearing suddenly in a warm dressing gown, extricated him from the difficulties into which he was carelessly wandering. "I am sorry," she said. "I'm afraid we can't interfere in any way. This is a very unpleasant business, mister. I'm afraid I didn't catch your name, and we have always found it better not to be mixed up with the police. Of course, if the Thippses are innocent, and I am sure I hope they are, it is very unfortunate for them, but I must say that the circumstances seem to me most suspicious, and to Theophilus too, and I should not like to have it said that we had assisted murderers. We might even be supposed to be accessories. Of course you are young, mister." "This is Lord Peter Wimsey, my dear," said Theophilus mildly. She was unimpressed. "Ah, yes," she said. "I believe you are distantly related to my late cousin, the Bishop of Carisbrooke. Poor man, he was always being taken in by impostors. He died without ever learning any better. I imagine you take after him, Lord Peter." "I doubt it," said Lord Peter. "So far as I know, he is only a connection, though it's a wise child that knows its own father. I congratulate you, dear lady, on taking after the other side of the family. You'll forgive my butting in upon you like this in the middle of the night, though, as you say, it's all in the family, and I'm sure I'm very much obliged to you, and for permitting me to admire that awfully fetching thing you've got on. Now, don't you worry, Mr. Appledore. I'm thinking the best thing I can do is to trundle the old lady down to my mother and take her out of your way. Otherwise you might be finding your Christian feelings getting the better of you some fine day, and there's nothing like Christian feelings for upsetting a man's domestic comfort. Good night, sir. Good night, dear lady. It's simply ripping of you to let me drop in like this." "Well," said Mrs. Appledore as the door closed behind him, "and I thank the goodness and the grace that on my birth have smiled," said Lord Peter, "and taught me to be bestially impertinent when I choose. Cat." 2 a.m. saw Lord Peter Wimsey arrive in a friend's car at the Dower House, Denver Castle, in company with a deaf and aged lady and an antique portmanteau. "It's very nice to see you, dear," said the Dowager Duchess, placidly. She was a small, plump woman with perfectly white hair and exquisite hands. In feature she was as unlike her second son as she was like him in character. Her black eyes twinkled cheerfully, and her manners and movements were marked with a neat and rapid decision. She wore a charming wrap from Liberty's, and sat watching Lord Peter eat cold beef and cheese as though his arrival in such incongruous circumstances and company were the most ordinary event possible, which with him indeed it was. "Have you got the old lady to bed?" asked Lord Peter. "Oh yes, dear. Such a striking old person, isn't she? And very courageous. She tells me she has never been in a motor car before, but she thinks you a very nice lad, dear. That careful of her. You remind her of her own son. Poor little Mr. Thipps. Whatever made your friend the inspector think he could have murdered anybody?" "My friend the inspector? No more, thank you, mother, is determined to prove that the intrusive person in Thipps's bath is Sir Reuben Levy, who disappeared mysteriously from his house last night. His line of reasoning is, we've lost a middle-aged gentleman without any clothes on in Park Lane. We found a middle-aged gentleman without any clothes on in Battersea. Therefore they're one and the same person, QED, and put little Thipps in quod." "You're very elliptical, dear," said the Duchess mildly. "Why should Mr. Thipps be arrested, even if they are the same?" "Sugg must arrest somebody," said Lord Peter, but there is one odd little bit of evidence come out which goes a long way to support Suggs' theory, only that I know it to be no-go by the evidence of my own eyes. Last night, at about 9:15, a young woman was strolling up the Battersea Park Road for purposes best known to herself, when she saw a gentleman in a fur coat and top hat sauntering along under an umbrella, looking at the names of all the streets. He looked a bit out of place, so, not being a shy girl, you see, she walked up to him and said, "Good evening." "Can you tell me, please," says the mysterious stranger, "whether this street leads into Prince of Wales Road?" She said it did, and further asked him in a jocular manner what he was doing with himself and all the rest of it, only she wasn't altogether so explicit about that part of the conversation, because she was unburdening her heart to Sugg, you see, and he's paid by a grateful country to have very pure, high-minded ideals. What, anyway, the old boy said he couldn't attend to her just then, as he had an appointment. "I've got to go and see a man, my dear," was how she said he put it. And he walked on up Alexandra Avenue towards Prince of Wales Road. She was staring after him, still rather surprised, when she was joined by a friend of hers, who said, "It's no good wasting your time with him. That's Levy. I knew him when I lived in the West End, and the girls used to call him Pea Green Incorruptible. Friend's name suppressed, owing to implications of story, but girl vouches for what was said." She thought no more about it till the milkman brought news this morning of the excitement at Queen Caroline Mansions. Then she went round, though not liking the police as a rule, and asked the man there whether the dead gentleman had a beard and glasses. Told he had glasses but no beard, she incautiously said, "Oh then, it isn't him," and the man said, "Isn't who?" and collared her. That's her story. Suggs delighted, of course, and quadded Thipps on the strength of it. "Dear me," said the Duchess, "I hope the poor girl won't get into trouble." "Shouldn't think so," said Lord Peter. "Thipps is the one that's going to get it in the neck. Besides, he's done a silly thing. I got that out of Sugg too, though he was sitting tight on the information. Seems Thipps got into a confusion about the train he took back from Manchester. Said first he got home at 10:30, then they pumped Gladys Horrocks, who let out he wasn't back till after 11:45. Then Thipps, being asked to explain the discrepancy, stammers and bungles and says, first, that he missed the train. Then Sugg makes inquiries at St Pancras and discovers that he left a bag in the cloakroom there at 10. Thipps, again asked to explain, stammers worse and says he walked about for a few hours, met a friend, can't say who, didn't meet a friend, can't say what he did with his time, can't explain why he didn't go back for his bag, can't say what time he did get in, can't explain how he got a bruise on his forehead, in fact, can't explain himself at all. Gladys Horrocks interrogated again, says this time Thipps came in at 10:30, then admits she didn't hear him come in. Can't say why she didn't hear him come in, can't say why she said first of all that she did hear him, bursts into tears, contradicts herself, everybody's suspicion roused, quad 'em both. "As you put it, dear," said the Duchess, "it all sounds very confusing and not quite respectable. Poor little Mr Thipps would be terribly upset by anything that wasn't respectable." "I wonder what he did with himself," said Lord Peter thoughtfully. "I really don't think he was committing a murder. Besides, I believe the fellow has been dead a day or two, though it don't do to build too much on doctor's evidence. It's an entertaining little problem. Very curious, dear, but so sad about poor Sir Reuben. I must write a few lines to Lady Levy. I used to know her quite well, you know, dear, down in Hampshire when she was a girl. Christine Ford, she was then, and I remember so well the dreadful trouble there was about her marrying a Jew. That was before he made his money, of course, in that oil business out in America. The family wanted her to marry Julian Freak, who did so well afterwards, and was connected with the family, but she fell in love with this Mr Levy and eloped with him. He was very handsome then, you know, dear, in a foreign-looking way, but he hadn't any means, and the Fords didn't like his religion. Of course, we're all Jews nowadays, and they wouldn't have minded so much if he'd pretended to be something else, like that Mr Simons we met at Mrs Porchester's, who always tells everybody that he got his nose in Italy at the Renaissance, and claims to be descended somehow or other from La Bella Simonetta. So foolish, you know, dear, as if anybody believed it. And I'm sure some Jews are very good people, and personally I'd much rather they believed something, though of course it must be very inconvenient, what with not working on Saturdays and circumcising the poor little babies and everything depending on the new moon and that funny kind of meat they have with such a slang-sounding name, and never being able to have bacon for breakfast. Still, there it was, and it was much better for the girl to marry him if she was really fond of him, though I believe young Freak was really devoted to her, and they're still great friends. Not that there was ever a real engagement, only a sort of understanding with her father, but he's never married, you know, and lives all by himself in that big house next to the hospital, though he's very rich and distinguished now, and I know ever so many people have tried to get hold of him. There was Lady Menwaring wanted him for that eldest girl of hers, though I remember saying at the time it was no use expecting a surgeon to be taken in by a figure that was all padding. They have so many opportunities of judging, you know, dear. Lady Levy seems to have had the knack of making people devoted to her, said Peter. Look at the pea-green incorruptible Levy. That's quite true, dear. She was a most delightful girl, and they say her daughter is just like her. I rather lost sight of them when she married, and you know your father didn't care much about business people, but I know everybody always said they were a model couple. In fact, it was a proverb that Sir Reuben was as well loved at home as he was hated abroad. I don't mean in foreign countries, you know, dear, just the proverbial way of putting things, like a saint abroad and a devil at home, only the other way on, reminding one of the Pilgrim's Progress. Yes, said Peter. I dare say the old man made 1 or 2 enemies. Dozens, dear. Such a dreadful place. The city, isn't it? Everybody Ishmaels together, though I don't suppose Sir Reuben would like to be called that, would he? Doesn't it mean illegitimate, or not a proper Jew anyway? I always did get confused with those Old Testament characters. Lord Peter laughed and yawned. I think I'll turn in for an hour or 2, he said. I must be back in town at 8. Parker's coming to breakfast. The Duchess looked at the clock, which marked 5 minutes to 3. I'll send up your breakfast at 6:30, dear, she said. I hope you'll find everything all right. I told them just to slip a hot water bottle in. Those linen sheets are so chilly. You can put it out if it's in your way. Chapter 4. So there it is, Parker, said Lord Peter, pushing his coffee cup aside and lighting his after-breakfast pipe. You may find it leads you to something, though it don't seem to get me any further with my bathroom problem. Did you do anything more at that after I left? No, but I've been on the roof this morning. The deuce you have. What an energetic devil you are. I say, Parker, I think this cooperative scheme is an uncommonly good one. It's much easier to work on someone else's job than one's own. Gives one that delightful feeling of interfering and bossing about, combined with the glorious sensation that another fellow is taking all one's own work off one's hands. You scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. What? Did you find anything? Not very much. I looked for any footmarks, of course, but naturally, with all this rain, there wasn't a sign. Of course, if this were a detective story, there'd have been a convenient shower exactly an hour before the crime, and a beautiful set of marks, which could only have come there between 2 and 3 in the morning, but this being real life in a London November, you might as well expect footprints in Niagara. I searched the roofs right along, and came to the jolly conclusion that any person in any blessed flat in the blessed row might have done it. All the staircases open onto the roof, and the leads are quite flat. You can walk along as easy as along Shaftesbury Avenue. Still, I've got some evidence that the body did walk along there. What's that? Parker brought out his pocketbook and extracted a few shreds of material, which he laid before his friend. One was caught in the gutter just above Thipps's bathroom window, another in a crack of the stone parapet just over it, and the rest came from the chimney stack behind, where they had caught in an iron stanchion. What do you make of them? Lord Peter scrutinized them very carefully through his lens. Interesting, he said. Damned interesting. Have you developed those plates, Bunter? He added, as that discreet assistant came in with the post. Yes, my lord. Caught anything? I don't know whether to call it anything or not, my lord, said Bunter dubiously. I'll bring the prince in. Do, said Whimsy. Hello, here's our advertisement about the gold chain in the Times. Very nice it looks. Write, phone or call 110 Piccadilly. Perhaps it would have been safer to put a box number, though I always think that the franker you are with people, the more you're likely to deceive them. So unused is the modern world to the open hand and the guileless heart. What? But you don't think the fellow who left that chain on the body is going to give himself away by coming here and inquiring about it? I don't, fathead, said Lord Peter with the easy politeness of the real aristocracy. That's why I've tried to get hold of the jeweller who originally sold the chain. See? He pointed to the paragraph. It's not an old chain, hardly worn at all. Oh, thanks, Bunter. Now, see here, Parker. These are the finger marks you noticed yesterday on the window sash and on the far edge of the bath. I'd overlooked them. I give you full credit for the discovery. I crawl, I grovel. My name is Watson, and you need not say what you were just going to say, because I admit it all. Now we shall. Hello, hello, hello. The three men stared at the photographs. The criminal, said Lord Peter bitterly, climbed over the roofs in the wet and not unnaturally got soot on his fingers. He arranged the body in the bath and wiped away all traces of himself except two, which he obligingly left to show us how to do our job. We learn from a smudge on the floor that he wore India rubber boots, and from this admirable set of fingerprints on the edge of the bath that he had the usual number of fingers and wore rubber gloves. That's the kind of man he is. Take the fool away, gentlemen. He put the prints aside and returned to an examination of the shreds of material in his hand. Suddenly he whistled softly. Do you make anything of these, Parker? They seem to me to be ravellings of some coarse cotton stuff, a sheet perhaps, or an improvised rope. Yes, said Lord Peter. Yes, it may be a mistake. It may be our mistake. I wonder. Tell me, do you think these tiny threads are long enough and strong enough to hang a man? He was silent, his long eyes narrowing into slits behind the smoke of his pipe. What do you suggest doing this morning? Asked Parker. Well, said Lord Peter, it seems to me it's about time I took a hand in your job. Let's go round to Park Lane and see what larks Sir Reuben Levy was up to in bed last night. And now, Mrs. Pemming, if you would be so kind as to give me a blanket, said Mr. Bunter, coming down into the kitchen, and permit of me hanging a sheet across the lower part of this window and drawing the screen across here so as to shut off any reflections, if you understand me, we'll get to work. Sir Reuben Levy's cook, with her eye upon Mr. Bunter's gentlemanly and well-tailored appearance, hastened to produce what was necessary. Her visitor placed on the table a basket containing a water bottle, a silver-backed hairbrush, a pair of boots, a small roll of linoleum, and the letters of a self-made merchant to his son, bound in polished morocco. He drew an umbrella from beneath his arm and added it to the collection. He then advanced a ponderous photographic machine and set it up in the neighbourhood of the kitchen range. Then, spreading a newspaper over the fair scrubbed surface of the table, he began to roll up his sleeves and insinuate himself into a pair of surgical gloves. Sir Reuben Levy's valet, entering at the moment and finding him thus engaged, put aside the kitchen maid, who was staring from a front row position, and inspected the apparatus critically. Mr. Bunter nodded brightly to him and uncorked a small bottle of grey powder. Odd sort of fish, your employer, isn't he? Said the valet carelessly. Very singular indeed, said Mr. Bunter. Now, my dear, he added ingratiatingly to the kitchen maid, I wonder if you'd just pour a little of this grey powder over the edge of the bottle while I'm holding it, and the same with this boot, here at the top. Thank you, miss. What is your name? Price? Oh, but you've got another name besides Price, haven't you? Mabel, eh? That's a name I'm uncommonly partial to. That's very nicely done. You've a steady hand, Miss Mabel. See that? That's the finger marks. 3 there and 2 here, and smudged over in both places. No, don't you touch 'em, my dear, or you'll rub the bloom off. We'll stand 'em up here till they're ready to have their portraits taken. Now then, let's take the hairbrush next. Perhaps, Mrs. Pemming, you'd like to lift him up very carefully by the bristles. By the bristles, Mr. Bunter? If you please, Mrs. Pemming, and lay him here, Now, Miss Mabel, another little exhibition of your skill, if you please. No, we'll try lamp black this time. Perfect. Couldn't have done it better myself. Ah, there's a beautiful set. No smudges this time. That'll interest his lordship. Now the little book. No, I'll pick that up myself. With these gloves, you see, and by the edges. I'm a careful criminal, Mrs. Pemming. I don't want to leave any traces. Dust the cover all over, Miss Mabel. Now this side. That's the way to do it. Lots of prints and no smudges. All according to plan. Oh, please, Mr. Graves, you mustn't touch it. It's as much as my place is worth to have it touched. Do you have to do much of this sort of thing? Inquired Mr. Graves from a superior standpoint. Any amount, replied Mr. Bunter, with a groan calculated to appeal to Mr. Graves's heart and unlock his confidence. If you'd kindly hold one end of this bit of linoleum, Mrs. Pemming, I'll hold up this end while Miss Mabel operates. Yes, Mr. Graves, it's a hard life, valeting by day and developing by night, morning tea at any time from 6:30 to 11, and criminal investigation at all hours. It's wonderful, the ideas these rich men with nothing to do get into their heads. I wonder you stand it, said Mr. Graves. Now there's none of that here. A quiet, orderly domestic life, Mr. Bunter, has much to be said for it. Meals at regular hours, decent, respectable families to dinner, none of your painted women, and no valeting at night. There's much to be said for it. I don't hold with Hebrews as a rule, Mr. Bunter, and of course I understand that you may find it to your advantage to be in a titled family, but there's less thought of that these days, and I will say for a self-made man, no one could call Sir Reuben vulgar, and my lady, at any rate, is county, Miss Ford. She was one of the Hampshire Fords, and both of them always most considerate. I agree with you, Mr. Graves. His lordship and me have never held with being narrow-minded. Why, yes, my dear, of course it's a footmark. This is the washstand linoleum. A good Jew can be a good man, that's what I've always said, and regular hours and considerate habits have a great deal to recommend them. Very simple in his tastes now, Sir Reuben, isn't he? For such a rich man, I mean. Very simple indeed, said the cook. The meals he and her ladyship have when they're by themselves with Miss Rachel, well, there now. If it wasn't for the dinners, which is always good when there's company, I'd be wasting my talents and education here, if you understand me, Mr. Bunter. Mr. Bunter added the handle of the umbrella to his collection and began to pin a sheet across the window, aided by the housemaid. Admirable, said he. Now, if I might have this blanket on the table and another on a towel horse or something of that kind by way of a background. You're very kind, Mrs. Pemming. Ah, I wish his lordship never wanted valeting at night. Many's the time I've sat up till 3 and 4 and up again to call him early to go off Sherlocking at the other end of the country, and the mud he gets on his clothes and his boots. I'm sure it's a shame, Mr. Bunter, said Mrs. Pemming, warmly. Low, I calls it. In my opinion, police work ain't no fit occupation for a gentleman, let alone a lordship. Everything made so difficult too, said Mr. Bunter, nobly sacrificing his employer's character and his own feelings in a good cause. Boots chucked into a corner, clothes hung up on the floor, as they say. That's often the case with these men as are born with a silver spoon in their mouths, said Mr. Graves. Now, Sir Reuben, he's never lost his good old-fashioned habits. Clothes folded up neat, boots put out in his dressing room, so as a man could get them in the morning, everything made easy. He forgot them the night before last, though. The clothes, not the boots, always thoughtful for others, is Sir Reuben. Ah, I hope nothing's happened to him. Indeed no, poor gentleman, chimed in the cook. And as for what they're saying, that he'd have gone out surreptitious-like to do something he didn't ought, well, I'd never believe it of him, Mr. Bunter, not if I was to take my dying oath upon it. Ah, said Mr. Bunter, adjusting his arc lamps and connecting them with the nearest electric light, and that's more than most of us could say of them as pays us. 5'10", said Lord Peter, and not an inch more. He peered dubiously at the depression in the bedclothes and measured it a second time with the gentleman scout's vade-mecum. Parker entered this particular in a neat pocket-book. I suppose, he said, a 6'2" man might leave a 5'10" depression if he curled himself up. Have you any Scotch blood in you, Parker? Inquired his colleague bitterly. Not that I know of, replied Parker. Why? Because of all the cautious, ungenerous, deliberate and cold-blooded devils I know, said Lord Peter. You are the most cautious, ungenerous, deliberate and cold-blooded. Here am I, sweating my brains out to introduce a really sensational incident into your dull and disreputable little police investigation, and you refuse to show a single spark of enthusiasm. Well, it's no good jumping at conclusions. Jump? You don't even crawl distantly within sight of a conclusion. I believe if you caught the cat with her head in the cream jug, you'd say it was conceivable that the jug was empty when she got there. Well, it would be conceivable, wouldn't it? Curse you, said Lord Peter. He screwed his monocle into his eye and bent over the pillow, breathing hard and tightly through his nose. Here, give me the tweezers, he said presently. Good heavens, man, don't blow like that. You might be a whale. He nipped up an almost invisible object from the linen. What is it? Asked Parker. It's a hare, said Whimsy grimly, his hard eyes growing harder. Let's go and look at Levy's hats, shall we? And you might just ring for that fellow with the churchyard name. Do you mind? Mr. Graves, when summoned, found Lord Peter Whimsy squatting on the floor of the dressing-room before a row of hats arranged upside down before him. Here you are, said that nobleman cheerfully. Now, Graves, this is a guessing competition, a sort of 3-hat trick to mix metaphors. Here are 9 hats, including 3 top hats. Do you identify all these hats as belonging to Sir Reuben Levy? You do? Very good. Now I have 3 guesses as to which hat he wore the night he disappeared, and if I guess right, I win. If I don't, you win. See? Ready? Go. I suppose you know the answer yourself, by the way. Do I understand your lordship to be asking which hat Sir Reuben wore when he went out on Monday night, your lordship? No, you don't understand a bit, said Lord Peter. I'm asking if you know. Don't tell me. I'm going to guess. I do know, your lordship, said Mr. Graves reprovingly. Well, said Lord Peter, as he was dining at the Ritz, he wore a topper. Here are 3 toppers. In 3 guesses, I'd be bound to hit the right one, wouldn't I? That don't seem very sporting. I'll take 1 guess. It was this one. He indicated the hat next the window. Am I right, Graves? Have I got the prize? That is the hat in question, my lord, said Mr. Graves, without excitement. Thanks, said Lord Peter. That's all I wanted to know. Ask Bunter to step up, would you? Mr. Bunter stepped up with an aggrieved air, and his usually smooth hair ruffled by the focusing cloth. Oh, there you are, Bunter, said Lord Peter. Look here. Here I am, my lord, said Mr. Bunter with respectful reproach. But if you'll excuse me saying so, downstairs is where I ought to be with all those young women about. They'll be fingering the evidence, my lord. I cry your mercy, said Lord Peter, but I've quarrelled hopelessly with Mr. Parker and distracted the estimable Graves, and I want you to tell me what fingerprints you have found. I shan't be happy till I get it, so don't be harsh with me, Bunter. Well, my lord, your lordship understands I haven't photographed them yet, but I won't deny that their appearance is interesting, my lord. The little book off the night table, my lord, has only the marks of 1 set of fingers. There's a little scar on the right thumb, which makes them easy recognised. The hairbrush, too, my lord, has only the same set of marks. The umbrella, the tooth-glass, and the boots all have 2 sets. The hand with the scarred thumb, which I take to be Sir Reuben's, my lord, and a set of smudges superimposed upon them, if I may put it that way, my lord, which may or may not be the same hand in rubber gloves. I could tell you better when I've got the photographs made, to measure them, my lord. The linoleum in front of the washstand is very gratifying indeed, my lord, if you will excuse my mentioning it. Besides the marks of Sir Reuben's boots, which your lordship pointed out, there's the print of a man's naked foot, a much smaller one, my lord, not much more than a 10-inch sock, I should say, if you asked me. Lord Peter's face became irradiated with almost a dim, religious light. A mistake, he breathed. A mistake. A little one, but he can't afford it. When was the linoleum washed last, Bunter? Monday morning, my lord. The housemaid did it, and remembered to mention it. Only remark she's made yet, and it's to the point. The other domestics. His features expressed disdain. What did I say, Parker? 5'10" and not an inch longer, and he didn't dare to use the hairbrush. Beautiful, but he had to risk the top hat. Gentlemen can't walk home in the rain late at night without a hat, you know, Parker. Look, what do you make of it? 2 sets of fingerprints on everything but the book and the brush, 2 sets of feet on the linoleum, and 2 kinds of hair in the hat. He lifted the top hat to the light and extracted the evidence with tweezers. Think of it, Parker, to remember the hairbrush and forget the hat, to remember his fingers all the time, and to make that one careless step on the telltale linoleum. Here they are, you see, black hair and tan hair, black hair in the bowler and the Panama, and black and tan in last night's topper, and then, just to make certain that we're on the right track, just one little auburn hair on the pillow, on this pillow, Parker, which isn't quite in the right place. It almost brings tears to my eyes. Do you mean to say, said the detective slowly. I mean to say, said Lord Peter, that it was not Sir Reuben Levy whom the cook saw last night on the doorstep. I say that it was another man, perhaps a couple of inches shorter, who came here in Levy's clothes and let himself in with Levy's latchkey. Oh, he was a bold, cunning devil, Parker. He had on Levy's boots, and every stitch of Levy's clothing down to the skin. He had rubber gloves on his hands, which he never took off, and he did everything he could to make us think that Levy slept here last night. He took his chances, and won. He walked upstairs, he undressed, he even washed and cleaned his teeth, though he didn't use the hairbrush for fear of leaving red hairs in it. He had to guess what Levy did with boots and clothes. One guess was wrong, and the other right, as it happened. The bed must look as if it had been slept in, so he gets in, and lies there in his victim's very pyjamas. Then, in the morning sometime, probably in the deadest hour between 2 and 3, he gets up, dresses himself in his own clothes that he has brought with him in a bag, and creeps downstairs. If anybody wakes, he is lost, but he is a bold man, and he takes his chance. He knows that people do not wake as a rule, and they don't wake. He opens the street door which he left on the latch when he came in. He listens for the stray passer-by or the policeman on his beat. He slips out. He pulls the door quietly to with the latch key. He walks briskly away in rubber-soled shoes. He's the kind of criminal who isn't complete without rubber-soled shoes. In a few minutes, he is at Hyde Park Corner. After that, he paused and added, he did all that, and unless he had nothing at stake, he had everything at stake. Either Sir Reuben Levy has been spirited away for some silly practical joke, or the man with the auburn hair has the guilt of murder upon his soul. Dear me, ejaculated the detective. You're very dramatic about it. Lord Peter passed his hand rather wearily over his hair. My true friend, he murmured, in a voice surcharged with emotion, you recall me to the nursery rhymes of my youth, the sacred duty of flippancy. There was an old man of Whitehaven who danced a quadrille with a raven, but they said, it's absurd to encourage that bird. So they smashed that old man of Whitehaven. That's the correct attitude, Parker. Here's a poor old buffer spirited away. Such a joke. And I don't believe he'd hurt a fly himself. That makes it funnier. Do you know, Parker, I don't care frightfully about this case after all. Which, this or yours? Both. I say, Parker, shall we go quietly home and have lunch and go to the Colosseum? You can if you like, replied the detective, but you forget I do this for my bread and butter. And I haven't even that excuse, said Lord Peter. Well, what's the next move? What would you do in my case? I'd do some good hard grind, said Parker. I'd distrust every bit of work Sugg ever did, and I'd get the family history of every tenant of every flat in Queen Caroline Mansions. I'd examine all their box rooms and roof traps, and I would inveigle them into conversations, and suddenly bring in the words body and pince-nez, and see if they wriggled like those modern what's-his-names. You would you? Said Lord Peter with a grin. Well, we've exchanged cases, you know, so just you toddle off and do it. I'm going to have a jolly time at Wyndham's. Parker made a grimace. Well, he said, I don't suppose you'd ever do it, so I'd better. You'll never become a professional till you learn to do a little work, Whimsy. How about lunch? I'm invited out, said Lord Peter magnificently. I'll run around and change at the club. Can't feed with Freddie Arbuthnot in these bags. Bunter. Yes, my lord. Pack up if you're ready, and come round and wash my face and hands for me at the club. Work here for another 2 hours, my lord. Can't do with less than 30 minutes exposure. The current's none too strong. You see how I'm bullied by my own man, Parker. Well, I must bear it, I suppose. Ta-ta. He whistled his way downstairs. The conscientious Mr. Parker, with a groan, settled down to a systematic search through Sir Reuben Levy's papers, with the assistance of a plate of ham sandwiches and a bottle of Bass. Lord Peter and the Honourable Freddie Arbuthnot, looking together like an advertisement for gents' trouserings, strolled into the dining room at Wyndham's. Haven't seen you for an age, said the Honourable Freddie. What have you been doing with yourself? Oh, fooling about, said Lord Peter languidly. Thick or clear, sir? Inquired the waiter of the Honourable Freddie. Which'll you have, Whimsy? Said that gentleman, transferring the burden of selection to his guest. They're both equally poisonous. Well, clear's less trouble to lick out of the spoon, said Lord Peter. Clear, said the Honourable Freddie. Consommé polonais, agreed the waiter. Very nice, sir. Conversation languished until the Honourable Freddie found a bone in the filleted sole and sent for the head waiter to explain its presence. When this matter had been adjusted, Lord Peter found energy to say, Sorry to hear about your governor, old man. Yes, poor old buffer, said the Honourable Freddie. They say he can't last long now. What? Oh, the Montrachet 2008. There's nothing fit to drink in this place, he added gloomily. After this deliberate insult to a noble vintage, there was a further pause, till Lord Peter said, How's change? Rotten, said the Honourable Freddie. He helped himself gloomily to salmis of game. Can I do anything? Asked Lord Peter. Oh, no, thanks. Very decent of you, but it'll pan out all right in time. This isn't a bad salmis, said Lord Peter. I've eaten worse, admitted his friend. What about those Argentines? Inquired Lord Peter. Here, waiter, there's a bit of cork in my glass. Cork? Cried the Honourable Freddie, with something approaching animation. You'll hear about this, waiter. It's an amazing thing a fellow who's paid to do the job can't manage to take a cork out of a bottle. What you say? Argentines? Gone all to hell. Old Levy bunking off like that's knocked the bottom out of the market. You don't say so, said Lord Peter. What do you suppose has happened to the old man? Cursed if I know, said the Honourable Freddie. Knocked on the head by the bears, I should think. Perhaps he's gone off on his own, suggested Lord Peter. Double life, you know. Giddy old blighters, some of these city men. Oh, no, said the Honourable Freddie, faintly roused. No, hang it all, Whimsy. I wouldn't care to say that. He's a decent old domestic bird, and his daughter's a charming girl. Besides, he's straight enough. He'd do you down fast enough, but he wouldn't let you down. Old Anderson is badly cut up about it. Who's Anderson? Chap with property out there. He belongs here. He was going to meet Levy on Tuesday. He's afraid those railway people will get in now, and then it'll be all UP. Who's running the railway people over here? Inquired Lord Peter. Yankee blighter, John P. Milligan. He's got an option, or says he has. You can't trust these brutes. Can't Anderson hold on? Anderson isn't Levy, hasn't got the shekels. Besides, he's only one. Levy covers the ground. He could boycott Milligan's beastly railway if he liked. That's where he's got the pull, you see. Believe I met the Milligan man somewhere, said Lord Peter thoughtfully. Ain't he a hulking brute with black hair and a beard? You're thinking of somebody else, said the Honourable Freddie. Milligan don't stand any higher than I do, unless you call 5'10" hulking, and he's bald anyway. Lord Peter considered this over the gorgonzola. Then he said, Didn't know Levy had a charming daughter. Oh yes, said the Honourable Freddie with an elaborate detachment. Met her and Mamma last year abroad. That's how I got to know the old man. He's been very decent. Let me into this Argentine business on the ground floor, don't you know? Well, said Lord Peter, you might do worse. Money's money, ain't it? And Lady Levy is quite a redeeming point. At least, my mother knew her people. Oh, she's all right, said the Honourable Freddie, and the old man's nothing to be ashamed of nowadays. He's self-made, of course, but he don't pretend to be anything else. No side. Toddles off to business on a 96 bus every morning. Can't make up my mind to taxis, my boy, he says. I had to look at every halfpenny when I was a young man, and I can't get out of the way of it now. Though, if he's taken his family out, nothing's too good. Rachel, that's the girl, always laughs at the old man's little economies. I suppose they've sent for Lady Levy, said Lord Peter. I suppose so, agreed the other. I'd better pop round and express sympathy or something. What? Wouldn't look well not to, do you think? But it's deuced awkward. What am I to say? I don't think it matters much what you say, said Lord Peter helpfully. I should ask if you can do anything. Thanks, said the lover. I will. Energetic young man, count on me. Always at your service. Ring me up any time of the day or night. That's the line to take, don't you think? That's the idea, said Lord Peter. Mr. John P. Milligan, the London representative of the Great Milligan Railroad and Shipping Company, was dictating code cables to his secretary in an office in Lombard Street when a card was brought up to him bearing the simple legend, Lord Peter Wimsey, Marlborough Club. Mr. Milligan was annoyed at the interruption, but, like many of his nation, if he had a weak point, it was the British aristocracy. He postponed for a few minutes the elimination from the map of a modest but promising farm and directed that the visitor should be shown up. Good afternoon, said that nobleman, ambling genially in. It's most uncommonly good of you to let me come round wasting your time like this. I'll try not to be too long about it, though I'm not awfully good at coming to the point. My brother never would let me stand for the county, you know. Said I wandered on so nobody'd know what I was talking about. Pleased to meet you, Lord Wimsey, said Mr. Milligan. Won't you take a seat? Thanks, said Lord Peter, but I'm not a peer, you know. That's my brother Denver. My name's Peter. It's a silly name, I always think, so old world and full of homely virtue and that sort of thing. But my godfathers and godmothers in my baptism are responsible for that, I suppose, officially, which is rather hard on them, you know, as they didn't actually choose it. But we always have a Peter, after the third Duke, who betrayed 5 kings somewhere about the Wars of the Roses, though come to think of it, it ain't anything to be proud of. Still, one has to make the best of it. Mr. Milligan, thus ingeniously placed at that disadvantage which attends ignorance, manoeuvred for position, and offered his interrupter a Corona. Thanks, awfully, said Lord Peter, though you really mustn't tempt me to stay here burbling all afternoon. By Jove, Mr. Milligan, if you offer people such comfortable chairs and cigars like these, I wonder they don't come and live in your office. He added mentally, I wish to goodness I could get those long-toed boots off you. How's a man to know the size of your feet, and a head like a potato? It's enough to make one swear. Say now, Lord Peter, said Mr. Milligan, can I do anything for you? Well, do you know, said Lord Peter, I'm wondering if you would. It's damned cheek to ask you, but fact is, it's my mother, you know. Wonderful woman, but don't realise what it means. Demands on the time of a busy man like you. We don't understand hustle over here, you know, Mr. Milligan. Now, don't you mention that, said Mr. Milligan. I'd be surely charmed to do anything to oblige the Duchess. He felt a momentary qualm as to whether a duke's mother were also a duchess, but breathed more freely as Lord Peter went on. Thanks, that's uncommonly good of you. Well now, it's like this. My mother, most energetic, self-sacrificing woman, don't you see, is thinking of getting up a sort of a charity bazaar down at Denver this winter, in aid of the church roof, you know. Very sad case, Mr. Milligan, fine old antique, early English windows and decorated angel roof, and all that, all tumbling to pieces, rain pouring in and so on. Vicar catching rheumatism at early service, owing to the draught blowing in over the altar. You know the sort of thing. They've got a man down starting on it, little beggar called Thipps, lives with an aged mother in Battersea, vulgar little beast, but quite good on angel roofs and things, I'm told." At this point, Lord Peter watched his interlocutor narrowly, but finding that this rigmarole produced in him no reaction more startling than polite interest tinged with faint bewilderment, he abandoned this line of investigation and proceeded. "I say, I beg your pardon, frightfully. I'm afraid I'm being beastly long-winded. Fact is, my mother is getting up this bazaar, and she thought it'd be an awfully interesting sideshow to have some lectures, sort of little talks, you know, by eminent businessmen of all nations. How I did it, kind of touch, you know, a drop of oil with a kerosene king, cash conscience and cocoa and so on. It would interest people down there no end. You see, all my mother's friends will be there, and we've none of us any money. Not what you'd call money, I mean. I expect our incomes wouldn't pay your telephone calls, would they? But we like awfully to hear about the people who can make money. Gives us a sort of uplifted feeling, don't you know? Well, anyway, I mean, my mother'd be frightfully pleased and grateful to you, Mr. Milligan, if you'd come down and give us a few words as a representative American. It needn't take more than 10 minutes or so, you know, because the local people can't understand much beyond shooting and hunting, and my mother's crowd can't keep their minds on anything more than 10 minutes together. But we'd really appreciate it very much if you'd come and stay a day or two, and just give us a little breezy word on the almighty dollar." "Why, yes," said Mr. Milligan. "I'd like to, Lord Peter. It's kind of the Duchess to suggest it. It's a very sad thing when these fine old antiques begin to wear out. I'll come with great pleasure, and perhaps you'd be kind enough to accept a little donation to the Restoration Fund." This unexpected development nearly brought Lord Peter up all standing. To pump, by means of an ingenious lie, a hospitable gentleman whom you are inclined to suspect of a peculiarly malicious murder, and to accept from him in the course of the proceedings a large cheque for a charitable object, has something about it unpalatable to any but the hardened Secret Service agent. Lord Peter temporized. "That's awfully decent of you," he said. "I'm sure they'd be no end grateful. But you'd better not give it to me, you know. I might spend it, or lose it. I'm not very reliable, I'm afraid. The vicar's the right person, the Reverend Constantine Throgmorton, St. John before the Latin Gate Vicarage, Duke's Denver, if you like to send it there." "I will," said Mr. Milligan. "Will you write it out now for £1,000, Scoot, in case it slips my mind later?" The secretary, a sandy-haired young man with a long chin and no eyebrows, silently did as he was requested. Lord Peter looked from the bald head of Mr. Milligan to the red head of the secretary, hardened his heart, and tried again. "Well, I'm no end grateful to you, Mr. Milligan, and so'll my mother be when I tell her. I'll let you know the date of the bazaar. It's not quite settled yet, and I've got to see some other businessmen, don't you know? I thought of asking someone from one of the big newspaper combines to represent British advertising talent, what? And a friend of mine promises me a leading German financier. Very interesting if there ain't too much feeling against it down in the country, and I'll have to find somebody or other to do the Hebrew point of view. I thought of asking Levy, you know, only he's floated off in this inconvenient way." "Yes," said Mr. Milligan, "that's a very curious thing, though I don't mind saying, Lord Peter, that it's a convenience to me. He had a cinch on my railroad combine, but I'd nothing against him personally, and if he turns up after I've brought off a little deal I've got on, I'll be happy to give him the right hand of welcome." A vision passed through Lord Peter's mind of Sir Reuben kept somewhere in custody till a financial crisis was over. This was exceedingly possible, and far more agreeable than his earlier conjecture. It also agreed better with the impression he was forming of Mr. Milligan. "Well, it's a rum go," said Lord Peter, "but I dare say he had his reasons. Much better not inquire into people's reasons, you know, what? Especially as a police friend of mine who's connected with the case says the old Johnny dyed his hair before he went." Out of the tail of his eye, Lord Peter saw the red-headed secretary add up 5 columns of figures simultaneously and jot down the answer. "Dyed his hair, did he?" said Mr. Milligan. "Dyed it red," said Lord Peter. The secretary looked up. Odd thing is, continued Whimsy, they can't lay hands on the bottle. Something fishy there, don't you think? What? The secretary's interest seemed to have evaporated. He inserted a fresh sheet into his loose-leaf ledger and carried forward a row of digits from the preceding page. I dare say there's nothing in it, said Lord Peter, rising to go. Well, it's uncommonly good of you to be bothered with me like this, Mr. Milligan. My mother'll be no end pleased. She'll write you about the date. I'm charmed, said Mr. Milligan. Very pleased to have met you. Mr. Scoot rose silently to open the door, uncoiling as he did so a portentous length of thin leg hitherto hidden by the desk. With a mental sigh, Lord Peter estimated him at 6'4". It's a pity I can't put Scoot's head on Milligan's shoulders, said Lord Peter, emerging into the swirl of the city. And what will my mother say?